I don't happen to believe this scientific jazz of yours.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and thanks again for the new subscribers. This is a little bit different today because it's a tag. So this is the first time I've done a tag, I think. I did the newbie tag, but this is the second time I've done a tag, but the first one that's not that classic first one. And this is taken off Michael K Vaughan's channel. So I'm considering him a friend, really. I mean, we haven't met, but we're having more and more conversations on BookTube, which is really lovely, and always watching his videos. And he did this tag, and I think it's a really cool set of questions and a really nice subject for the video, and that was called the Astounding Science Fiction Tag. So that's what I'm going to do today.
You're a very strange man, even for a human.
So the first question is, what was the first science fiction book that I read? So I'm going to answer that question with 4 answers. And the reason is that really I don't think it gives you the whole picture if it's just that one book. So to start off with, it was a really major thing for me when we studied 1984 by George Orwell in school. That was when I was in the last couple of years of school in my English class, and it was obviously extremely important because it's such a huge book with so many ideas. It really does make you think in a way that is quite powerful for a teenager, and the way it projects a potential future with this totalitarian state and the dystopian future that it pictures, all that stuff is so important for an impressionable teenager. So 1984 was a major point in my love of science fiction, and that started at school with that book. But I think it's quite a good response to the answer to think about what I read off my own back. So obviously at school we were studying it, so I had to read it. So I also just got into reading in general around then. So I was reading a lot of film tie-ins. So film tie-ins like Star Wars and Alien and E.T. I remember reading those 3 for definite. I also read something that's not science fiction, but I also read the Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom film tie-in book. I remember that. So those film tie-ins were quite an important thing for me, just getting used to the idea of reading for fun. And I also remember reading The Invisible Man pretty early on. So I reread that recently, but I read that when I was about 14, 15, something like that. So that was a really big moment for me as well, reading this. So I've always loved H.G. Wells, and that was the first book I read by him when I was really young. So that was important. And then also going back into this idea of reading for fun and some of the other things I read that got me really into that kind of reading that weren't related to films I was watching. Stainless Steel Rat, Harry Harrison. That was a really important book for me. It's a lot of fun, very light-hearted. I read all of the books in the series, and recently caught up about a year ago as well with some of the other ones that he wrote. But the first 5 books I read in very quick succession when I was younger, and this book is a really big sort of part of that early love of science fiction and love of reading science fiction. Question number 2, what was the last science fiction book you read? What was the last book I read? Because I read a lot of science fiction, mostly science fiction, and it was Autonomous by Annalee Newitz, and I want to feature this in a themed video I want to do on robotics and AI. So I'm getting that together in a minute, so I'll probably do that in a few weeks' time. But it was a really good book, a very complex book. But yeah, so I will be going into this book in detail soon, but in the meantime, this was the last one I read. So if you've read this already, make a little comment because it is definitely worth reading. Third question, what got you into science fiction? And like anyone from my generation, and it'll probably be true for the new generations, would be TV. TV got me into science fiction, it's got to be said. So obviously I love reading science fiction, and you can obviously get a lot more from the books, but television was huge, massively important influence on my life. So what kind of programs am I talking about? So when I was really young, Doctor Who was a big deal, and really Tom Baker was the first ones I started watching properly, and Pete Davidson was my doctor, as they call it, the doctor that was the one that I was watching religiously, that was kind of from my age group, if you like. So Peter Davison was a big, those years in Doctor Who was a big thing for me. So Doctor Who was a big thing. Same time, Blake Seven. Absolutely loved Blake Seven. And I think I was starting to get sort of a bit sort of politically minded when I was watching Blake Seven, even at that age, even quite young. So I liked the whole Robin Hood thing in Blake Seven, and the fact that they were kind of rebelling against this fascist regime and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, Blake Seven was a major thing for me at the time. Also, I remember we were all talking about it at school, V. So there was a recent remake which wasn't too bad, but didn't seem to be that popular. So that was a bit of a shame, but it seemed to be okay. But the original V, now it gets repeated a lot, and it looks a little bit cheesy, but that was a big deal for us, and clearly it's like an allegory about World War II and the Nazis and that kind of thing. But there's loads of elements that were quite cool, and everyone loved Michael Ironside, and Tyler, I think was his character's name. But V, big deal for me and my mates at the time. And Battlestar Galactica, the original Battlestar Galactica, I remember absolutely loving that when I was a kid. And Buck Rogers as well. I was a big fan of Buck Rogers. So all those kind of like pulpy, fun, action-based TV shows I absolutely loved when I was a kid. But also I was really into Sapphire and Steel, which they did start repeating recently on one of my channels. I can't remember which channel I've got that showed that. And it was weird because I really wasn't in the right mood for it. Didn't go down very well in the first sort of 20 minutes I was watching it. But I'd like to give it a proper go because I absolutely loved it when I was a kid. But it's very slow and very existential, really, and quite reflective and very melancholic, really. But I did love it when I was a kid, Sapphire and Steel. If you've seen that show, comment below because it was quite an unusual show. So that was a big thing for me when I was a kid as well. So all those TV programs were bringing me into that kind of state of mind of looking for and loving science fiction and getting into reading science fiction as well. Huge influence on me. The fourth question is, what's your favourite movie, favourite science fiction movie? So this is hard because there's so many, and it's hard to choose a book, but because the feelings you get from the films are so similar, and because there's so many of them, and there's a lot of the reasons why you like certain films, you can attribute that to lots of different films. It's quite hard to pick one film. So I'm going to pick three. So apologies if that's diverting the whole point of picking one, but I'm picking three. First one, which I don't think is praised enough, I think, which is why I'm going to mention it first, is an amazing film directed by Duncan Jones with an amazing central performance, and there's only one actor pretty much in the film, Moon. Phenomenal film. I love that film so much. The plot is brilliant. The acting is phenomenal. And I just think it's such a great film. And it was such a surprise as well. And the way it ends is brilliant. Yeah, Moon, such a great film. I love that. I'd recommend that to anybody. So that's definitely a favourite, and technically the favourite. But then I'm going to say that about all these three films. Also, another film I don't really think is praised enough, but it is very famous. And David Cronenberg is a legend. He's an iconic director, but I still don't understand why people don't rave about The Fly as much as they could do, because I just think it's an incredible film. I think it's a perfect film. I can't think of what's wrong with it. I just think it's incredible. So The Fly, the David Cronenberg's version of The Fly, I think is definitely equally as phenomenal and a favourite movie, science fiction movie. And then, the last one I'm going to pick is a bit obvious. It's a lot of people's favourite science fiction film, and that's John Carpenter's The Thing. So I could have picked loads of films, but I've picked those three because I think I can't really choose between those three, basically. So yeah, if you've seen those films and love those films, comment below. But that's definitely my response to favourite science fiction movie. Okay, the next question, the fifth question. What's your favourite science fiction TV programme? And it has to be Farscape. It's got to be. I love it so much. It's not necessarily the best TV programme out there. It's not necessarily the first thing that got me into science fiction, but it's definitely the one I'm most fond of, the one that I'm most sort of emotionally invested in, the thing that makes me smile whenever I think about it. Farscape. I absolutely love that programme so much. And it's so good they managed to finish the series, because obviously it did get cancelled, and there was that big Save Farscape campaign online. It was one of the earliest online internet campaigns to bring something back, I think. And then they did the 2 short films. It was like a short mini-series that completed the story, and they were absolutely amazing. There's one thing in the last kind of hour of all of that I wish hadn't have happened, but you might be able to guess what it is if they're going to continue doing stories, because there's lots of rumours they might do that. But anyway, I won't put any spoilers out there in case you watch it. But I absolutely love that show, and I definitely recommend it. There's only a very few week episodes, I think, and there's 4 seasons. And if you don't know the premise is that John Crichton, an astronaut, gets sucked into a wormhole when he's doing some experimental test outs on his technology that he's created for a shuttle that he's piloting. And he ends up going through to this other galaxy, basically, and gets embroiled in all sorts of different shenanigans with these criminals that he meets, and they've all got different reasons why they are criminals, and basically the plot develops from there. They've all got different reasons why they've got their own mission that they're trying to do throughout the series, and that kind of blends into the story a little bit, and they all change through the series. It gets bigger because you get different sort of villains coming through that have got their own agendas, and the characters change throughout the whole thing. You've got a really great sense, like Blake 7, where they're not getting on very well. You know, they don't always get on, and when it kind of settles down a little bit, something throws them so they don't get on anymore, or there's a new character that throws it. And it's all really well written. There's some great ideas in there that as far as I know, were the first time anything like that happened. Like, for example,
shut up! Quiet! I said quiet!
It was quite a wild show. And there's an episode which is just animation. After a brief introduction to the plot, then it kind of goes into animation. There's so many ideas that the show had. And obviously a big thing about the show is the creatures and the effects done by Jim Henson's Creature Shop. And that stuff is great. So any fan of physical effects, that you might enjoy that side of the show, because they did some really ambitious stuff. I mean, the pilot of the living ship that is the main ship that they use on the show, the pilot is operated by lots of people. It's a huge thing. And when a human character, is in the same room as the pilot, you can see how big the pilot is. And yeah, it's just awesome. And they've got a great character that's an animatronic puppet that is called Rigel. And Rigel is just an absolutely brilliant example of someone that you don't know what they're going to do. His alliances and his elements of trust and his loyalty is all over the place throughout the whole show, and it's just brilliantly done. And he's really likable, but you would hate to be with him on a ship, and all that kind of stuff is brilliant. So yeah, you can see the influence from different things, but I just love everything that Farscape did. Even the weaker shows are still brilliant. So yeah, Farscape's definitely my all-time favourite. So question number 6, I like this question, this is interesting. So, science fiction book that you think should be read more often. So I'm going to answer this with 2 answers, because I'm going to choose a comedy book and a serious book, because I think there's such different psychology behind reading them, and there's such different audiences, that I think it'd be nice to have a comedy and a serious one. So a book that I just absolutely love, and I've raved about it before in my comedy video, but again, hardly ever hear anyone talk about it, is The Sheriff of Yornamere by Michael Rubens. The Sheriff of Yornamere. It's got a little bit of an unfortunate cover. I quite like the cover, but it's not a very clear and obvious cover that tells you what the book is about. But I would absolutely recommend you read this, because it's really funny, and it's very witty. The humour is quite dry in places. It's very sarcastic. It's quite character-based humour. But yeah, no, absolutely, you should read this. I'll give you a quick rundown of the plot. Meet Cole, hapless space rogue and part-time smuggler. His sidekick just stole his girlfriend. The galaxy's most hideous and feared bounty hunter wants to lay eggs in his brain. And the luxury space yacht Cole just hijacked turns out to be filled with interstellar do-gooders, one especially loathsome stowaway, and a cargo of freeze-dried orphans. I think I'm just going to leave it there. You want to read it just from that. So yeah, The Sheriff of Yornamere is just a brilliant book. So that's a book that I think was that's a book that I wish was more famous, because it really does deserve it. Really, really cool. Michael Rubens, The Sheriff of Yornamere. And the other book I'm going to mention, which is the serious one, is Semiosis by Sue Burke. So idealistic settlers that are escaping conflict on Earth arrive on a planet. They think they're all safe and they found this great new home, but they're not alone, and there is sentient plants on the planet that think, who are these guys? This is our planet. And it's just brilliantly written, and it's really fascinating and it's really different, I think. So what's this little sentience takes many forms is the tagline there, and I think that's the point of the book, and it's just written so well. And there was a little bit of praise about it when it came out, but I just think it's much better than the reputation it's got. So yeah, that's one I think should be read more. Question number 7, what's your favourite short story? Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. Sound of Thunder is in the book The Golden Apples of the Sun. Absolutely recommend you buy The Golden Apples of the Sun anyway, and any books by Ray Bradbury. I do want to do a video on Ray Bradbury, but in the meantime, The Sound of Thunder. It's the reason why we refer to the time loop issue as the butterfly effect, because that story. So you've got hunters that go back to prehistoric age to do some fun hunting, and they want to hunt dinosaurs, and they have to stay on this path that's been created. If they deviate from the path, it could be catastrophically dangerous because how it could affect the future. It's a very short story, so I'm not going to say any more, but you know, it does create the butterfly effect. So yeah, Sound of Thunder, definitely my favourite science fiction short story, probably my all-time favourite short story. I just think it's amazing, and he's just a fantastic writer, Ray Bradbury. Okay, favourite book. I couldn't find my copy of it again, so this happened before when I was going through 25, was it 50? This happened before when I was going through 50 books that I wanted to just say were 50 favourite speculative fiction books. So yeah, I still can't find my copy of it, but Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes is my favourite, all-time favourite science fiction book. There's a few other books I could have chosen, so there's loads of books up there, but this one is probably the one that just edges up there because I just think it's so different. It's the best example of science fiction tackling the idea of experiments, trying to play around with intelligence, and it's, you know, hugely compelling, and just the way it's written as well is so clever because that helps to make it immersive, and when things change you really are moved by it because of the writing. Flowers for Algernon, Daniel Keyes, incredible book, and that's my all-time favourite science fiction book. So that's my response to these awesome questions on the Astounding Science Fiction Tag, which I think was created by Michael K Vaughan. Yeah, hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please make comments, because it's really cool to get these comments and I can see what people have enjoyed me talking about or what's resonated with them. And I will continue to do more videos on the books I'm reading, and maybe I'll do one special on Farscape, I don't know, because it was quite cool talking about it. Anyway, thanks a lot everyone, and see you later.